Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. We're going to talk about containers 101, but first, a word from Farmers Defense.
Farmers Defense. Farm and garden in the ultimate comfort. Farmers Defense has lightweight and durable sleeves made to protect you against the element while farming. Farmer sleeves offer an unparalleled protection of arms and skin for any farmer, gardener, or outdoor worker. Say goodbye to irritated skin and sunburns in the garden. Their sleeves offer cooling comfort and protection against the elements outdoors, an alternative to thick clothing. Farmers Defense is made of wicking material with UBF protection factor 50 plus to protect you from allergens and scratches. You can find all their great products and more at farmersdefense.com.
Container gardening is not just something that, it's a very universal aspect of gardening that people whom have the availability and land to grow choose also to grow in containers. But there are some that just strictly grow in containers because of limitations or restrictions in which they are currently going through. So container gardening, there is some goods and bads and pros and cons and things you should do and things you shouldn't do. And we're going to try to get through as many of that as we can in this segment.
Absolutely. So one thing with container gardening is thinking about what you want to grow in. And now you might think, well, I can just grow in whatever. And maybe that might be the case for you where you want to just start, you want to grow in 5-gallon buckets or reuse milk jugs or whatever for certain things. But some people, I know they like to have a certain look or aesthetic. So that's something that they want to consider. Maybe they want to invest in some terracotta pots to line their driveway, or they went
Root Maker grow bags.
Yeah, Root Maker grow bags. They went to the local garden center and felt inspired by something. So we can talk more about container sizes, but the biggest thing is making sure you have drainage. You could spend $50 on a beautiful handmade clay pot made by the local artisan lady at the craft fair, but if you don't have drainage holes,
you got a swamp and things are dead.
Yeah. So just so you know, you can use for Root Maker, as I had mentioned briefly, you can use rootmaker.com, go enter code radio23. You can save 15% off your order.
They have grow bags with white coating from 1 to 60 gallon and raised beds, portable raised beds as well.
Let me ask you quick.
Yeah.
So say I did buy this pot for $50 from the artisan lady,
yeah,
or whoever, and I want to put a Root Maker grow bag in there. Can I do that?
You would still need drainage because you can put a Root Maker grow bag in a container that doesn't have drainage, but when you water or it rains, it's going to pull up in the bottom and eventually come up into the grow bag and turn the grow bag into a mess. So if you don't have drainage holes in that particular type of material, you would want to get a masonry bed or have somebody drill holes safely and maybe hidden in the device in which you can get the drainage so you can put something inside of it.
Well, you could just do it in the bottom or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when it comes to grow bags or containers, again, whatever you're growing in, keep this in mind. The less the amount of soil, the quicker it's going to dry out, the faster the plant will die if you don't water. So a 5-gallon bucket's going to dry out a lot quicker than a 1-gallon grow bag or a milk jug. So keep that in mind. And all plants, regardless whether you're growing pumpkins or tomatoes or peppers or lettuce, they all need moisture. Some may need more than others. However, keeping that moisture, whether by manual means of a watering can or you get a drip system from dripworks.com, or for your tomato, you use a tree diaper or whatever the device is in order to keep the moisture to the plant, because all this work that you've put into it, there is an investment time, there is a process and time in which you've put into it. You want it to grow. And you want to make sure that these containers are located in the proper area too.
Right. So a lot of people will sometimes use containers to establish, to enhance a landscape, or they will use it because they don't have a good place to grow
mobility
in the ground. Yeah, or mobility. But maybe they're like, my backyard faces north. I don't really want to use my front yard, so I'm going to put these containers on the south side of my house. That's always an option. Also, maybe you want them on your porch or something because you don't want to have to go out to the side of your house to handle those containers.
Or you rent, or you're in some type of association where you can't put things in the ground. And so containers are the only option.
Right.
So with pleasing aesthetic containers, you could do a lot in a very small space.
Absolutely. So you want to think about where you want to put it, and then also think about, okay, once I put this here and put the soil in there.
Yeah, there you go. Do it that way. Do it that way.
Yeah.
Put the container where you want it.
Yeah.
Then put the soil in, because a container gets very, very heavy with wet soil, compost or potting mix. And let's make this thing easy and not difficult it up.
And you may have a very strong husband.
I don't want to lift it if we don't have to.
Who can lift all the things, but he might not want to lift it.
Let's not lift things we don't need to lift.
Right. So, and you might be very strong yourself, like some of us. So, you want to think about where you're going to put it. Then you put your potting soil or your compost. So let's talk about that potting soil versus compost versus container mix, whatever.
Slow release, something we've grown in all 100% compost. We've grown in potting mix or container mix. You want to look, if you're going to go with a container mix, you want to look for something that has a slow release fertilizer. Even though it has a slow release fertilizer, you also want something to have some kind of moisture retention mechanism in it, whether it's fertilizer, vermiculite. Those add air in it, but also they can hold some moisture as well. Some containers have, or some potting soil mixes have added things in which they absorb and release the moisture as the soil needs. Just because it has a fertilizer in the compost or fertilizer in the potting soil doesn't mean that you never have to fertilize again. Containers are one of those, keep this note here, because containers need to be fertilized very frequently because of the water that is leaching out that nutrients from the soil. In the ground, you don't have that problem as much because you got the ground. You got nutrients coming in and going out, and worms and insects and all that moving stuff around. In a container, you don't have that. So you will have to either compost tea or organic fertilizer, liquid or granular, something of that magnitude in order to continue to feed your plant. If you do incomplete compost, I would still recommend a feeding regimen because there is that leaching. When you water and you water the container good, you're going to see the color of the water change as it drains out the bottom. That is pulling some of that nutrients and the soil pigmentation out of it. So yes, either one is fine. A mixture of both is fine, but you want to keep water to it and you want to keep nutrients to your plants.
Another thing to keep in mind is that if you do have an apartment where you have a balcony or a deck, you want to
hey, what's dripping on me down here?
Well, you want to keep that in mind, but you want to keep in mind the weight.
Yes.
So you might want to stick with 5-gallon buckets with the soil, and then versus something like a terracotta or clay container, because that's going to add more weight, especially if you also enjoy being on your balcony. If you know that you do have neighbors below you, you want to be mindful that you're not dripping on them. But if you're, watering in the afternoon or something, or that they're not home, it's fine.
You can get a sled, one of them toboggans that have sides on it, and put 2 or 3 of those in one of those, and paint it up. Or there's many different creative ways in which you can set your containers in to capture the water so it's not dripping down and wasting, but it can absorb back in through the grow bag or the drainage holes in whatever device that you're using.
Right. And one thing I also want to mention briefly is that you can do the straw bale method.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know about this method. You're basically taking a straw bale, you're conditioning it so that you can grow plants in it. You're not just putting plants directly into a straw bale. You're conditioning it so it makes the bale into a container itself that will have the ability to host plants, to let them root. And then you can use that as an option. And you might think, well, that's maybe something I don't want to do, and that's fine. You might think it's ugly or whatever, but it is an option as a container of sorts.
Mm-hmm. So, Holly, Phylum Bioproducts. They have products in which will fight grubs and beetles.
Yeah, so if you want to control beetle and grub invaders without affecting the rest of the ecosystem in your yard, then Grub Gone and Beetle Gone is the solution. Phylum's Grub Gone and Beetle Gone target a wide range of invasive and destructive beetles, weevils, borers without harming non-targets such as bees, ladybugs, butterflies, earthworms, or other beneficial insects. You can purchase these products locally in Massachusetts at Ward's Nursery and McHugh Garden Center and Hyannis Country Garden, in Connecticut at Van Wilgen's Garden Center, in Maine at Salisbury Organics, and New York at Fadigan's Nursery, and Ohio at Berlin Seeds. You can go to phyllumbioproducts.com. You want to target the pests, not the rest. phyllumbioproducts.com, PHYLLOM bioproducts.com.
And if you are a garden center, nursery, feed store, and you want to carry Phylum, you can reach out to Phylum at phyllumbioproducts.com or right here at the show at gardentalkradio@gmail.com, and we will get you hooked up with them.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.